Hello there, wonderful folks out there. It's me, Ben Calder, for the BTPA, the Bowen Therapy Professional Association, here with another one of our interesting interviews from the world of bodywork. Today, I'm going to be speaking to David McGettigan, who is the Ireland-based pain and movement specialist, who's just in the process of releasing his Bigger Than Pain subscription and recovery toolkit, which has got a lot of support for you as a free ebook that you can get hold of from his site, and we'll give you all the links for that in the description shortly. And David is an incredible chronic pain specialist that came into this by dealing with his own pain journey and finding that the sports rehab degree that he didn't really give him the tools he needed, and then started moving on through Gary Ward's Anatomy and Motion, the P-DTR training, the Joseph Palomar work on the deep tendon reflexes, and then it's just been evolving his clinical work for many years now, including a lot of really interesting insights through his own psychology that he's been able to apply in his clinic. His YouTube channel's got 285 videos on it. He's got a stack of Substack articles all on his work. So we're going to look forward to having a great discussion with him here today. But before we get into that, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done already. Like and share the work that we're doing so we can help reach more people and support people resolving their pain issues. But enough from me. Let's get on with the interview with David. Yay. David, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really wonderful to have you here on the BTPA podcast. Really excited to talk to you about your work today. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Ben, for having me on. Really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, no problem at all. So let's just start. For anybody that maybe doesn't know your work, hasn't come across what you do before, tell us, A, where you are and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so I'm based in Ireland. I have a clinic in my hometown, Monaghan, and I have another one in Dublin, which is about kind of a 90-minute spin in between. And yeah, I'm in this career now about 15 years ish. So yeah, I've kind of grown my own business over that time period, done lots and lots of extra training, lots and lots of kind of uh, figuring out between my own symptom journey and then onwards into like obviously helping clients. And I think one of the things for me is I kept running into what I would call roadblocks. Um, I would meet a client where my knowledge was there was a gap, and it would really frustrate me because when I started out, I was probably meeting a lot of clients that were beyond what I was able to help. So a lot of chronic pain clients, and it was like double Dutch to me, even though I had my own pain symptoms and my own journey over more than a decade of symptoms. It was just to try and make sense of it in totality was almost impossible back then. So yeah, it's been a long journey of education, training, failing, succeeding, failing again, succeeding hopefully again. um, and I now kind of work with, what would I say? Like I work with people who end up bouncing around between practitioners who are looking for help with symptoms. They maybe have done the strength exercises, they've done the manual therapies, they've done the rehab at times, the stretching, whatever it might be, and there's I think on some level they're still seeking because they know there's more available, and on another level they don't know how or why or what to look for. So I end up meeting people like that all the time, and they've got sometimes really, really crazy histories in terms of injuries, and sometimes they've got very, very little, but all these symptoms. They've had all the scans, they've had all the tests, and there's nothing really showing up for them, or there's nothing that can directly link or explain their symptoms. So it's those people that I end up working with. So yeah, it's kind of something I've fallen into. Um, Probably off the back of trying to help myself first. And now I love it. Absolutely love
Okay, beautiful. So let's roll the clock back. Let's
it.
listen to a little bit of your own stuff. What was it that you were trying to solve, and how did you manage to end up with the pain in the first place?
Yeah, so one thing that I see in clinic nowadays, I'll start with this. One thing I see nowadays in clinic is that it's never ever just an injury. It's never ever just a structural problem in the body. Like I mentioned, there's loads of people who have scans that show very, very little, yet have all the symptoms. So my own journey, in hindsight has been pretty clear, but at the time living through it, it's obviously really, really difficult. I had chronic pain in my lower back, around my sacroiliac joint, kind of pelvic area, hip pain that would refer down into my testicle, which is very scary at one
Mm.
point. I'd had lots of injuries. I had neck problems as well. I had broken bones. I had surgery, an appendix out, just different things that all added up on my timeline. So obviously, when I was going through that, everything is injury and structural. It was very complex. Nothing made sense. In hindsight, years later, I realized that before I go there, I developed a lot of health anxiety as well.
Mm.
So I developed a lot of, I think it was my 18th, 19th birthday. I was on, maybe 20th, I was on a treadmill in my local hospital doing a stress test for my heart because I was having panic attacks. I was anxious before I knew what anxiety was back in the day. And I had all this stuff that was happening. Nobody could help me make sense of it. Like my GP was brilliant and yet didn't have, a comprehensive kind of answer or a way for me to help me navigate. The physios I work with were kind of blaming this on like a structural thing a lot of the time. And nothing was helping me make sense of it. In fact, it was probably making me more worried, more afraid, and therefore more anxious, obviously, about my health, about my body, because I was 18, 19, 20. I'd been struggling for a few years at this stage, and I was 18, 19, 20, and I was really struggling. And through the process of educating myself after my degree and stuff, I started to put dots together, connect dots together, and realized that back in my early kind of teens, I had 3 or 4 pretty big life events
Mm.
that were probably set the scene for the health anxiety stuff. So they were involving kind of illnesses, some people unfortunately passing away, some right in my own home, and some stuff that really, really shook me up, if I put it that way, and I did not realize that at the time. So I lived through all that. Took me probably the best part of 7, 8, 9 years to figure that piece out. And once I started making sense of that, a lot more things made sense. So for me, early on, I had this kind of the mind affects the body type of an experience, and it opened my eyes as to what somebody with chronic pain would potentially be going through, obviously. So I started to look for tools to help me. So I did my degree, and I got lots of information, but I didn't get anything that made sense as to what was happening for me. And then obviously I was starting to work for myself, so I was starting to meet clients, and their stuff didn't make any sense to me either. I was kind of cookie cutter. This is what you learn for this problem. This is what you do, and people would be kind of getting better. Some would be getting worse. Some would be making no change at all, and I had no answers. So I suffered with all the stuff I had, and it was a process of unraveling over quite a long period of time for me. Um, it I suppose one thing to say is it takes time.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you,
Sure.
you can't short circuit this process. You can't unlearn fear, worry, concern in an instant, I don't think. You have to take some time and work your way through it. So that was definitely my journey. It took me probably 11, 12 years to overcome the symptoms I was having. And a large part of it for me was when it really clicked for me that my structure was actually okay,
Yeah.
but that the explanations I'd been given, the stuff I'd read online, all of that stuff was all fragility based, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It was how it was explained, probably explained to them, taught to them, and given passed on to me. And that was a big turning point for me with my relationship with pain. And then it was me figuring out my relationship with the kind of health anxiety stuff and how and why that had come through. So that kind of gives sort of a little bit of a flavor as to what I was going through, and it took time, took ages. It
Yeah.
wasn't a very happy period of my life at that
Mm.
stage, I'll put it that way. Um, Thankfully have been able to put the pieces together and I suppose almost self reassure in a way over time to get myself to a place where I'm happy and healthy,
Yeah. And so, what was your actual degree in? Because it sounds like you went into it because you thought it was going to give you a response to
Yeah.
what was going on for you, but didn't really.
So I did a degree in sports rehabilitation. Like the process to get into physiotherapy, let's say over in
Hmm.
Ireland, is fairly hardcore. We have to get really, really, really top exam results, and didn't work hard enough.
Yeah,
I'll be brutally honest, it didn't work hard enough. There's
sure,
probably a bit of like my poor younger David couldn't handle if he worked hard enough and
sure.
didn't get there.
Yeah.
So anyway, it didn't work hard enough. Went and did a bridging course. It was a 2 year kind of like 35, 40 hour a week physiology and health science course. It was really, really hard actually, but
Mm-hmm.
got through that. Did some placements and decided I wanted to do sports rehabilitation, which is the degree I did over in Salford, versus physio, not knowing that that would make things significantly harder post
Mm-hmm.
graduation because I couldn't join the NHS, the HSE, those types of professions and work within them. I had to paddle my own canoe.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went into it for two reasons. One was probably in hindsight to help myself to get information, which I kept telling myself that wasn't the case, but that's probably what I was doing, to be honest. And the second one was I was kind of more, I had a pretty poor experience shadowing a physio
Mm-hmm.
and didn't, in a hospital setting, didn't really enjoy it at all. And was then like, I, I think I'd enjoy working with sports people more. Again, not realizing that in the UK there's way more opportunity than there
Mm-hmm.
is in Ireland for that, because
Mm-hmm.
Ireland is a lot of amateur sport and not a lot of professional sport. And I did get opportunities there, but it was a lot less than I was kind of thinking back in the day. So I went and did my degree, and look, it gave me the basics of everything. It gave me some rehabilitation, it gave me good anatomy, it gave me, a lot of assessment skills, all that sort of stuff. So there was nothing wrong with it from that perspective. But I probably came away a little bit disappointed because I was probably on one level looking for answers for me, and on the other level, it was kind of I left with not that much clinical experience, clinical thinking. Which look, I can't expect to build that ahead of time either.
Sure.
It takes experience, it takes time, it takes years of practice to connect the dots in that way. But it left me kind of a little underwhelmed, but lots and lots of questions. And I suppose those questions have fueled me since, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. And so, did you spend time actually? You mentioned earlier on how there was a degree of this that was about the way that your belief systems were working, the way that your
Mhm.
mind was looking at this. So, did you actually ever go and have any what I would class as kind of classical psychological support, see any counselling, anything like that at all?
So what I did was I was reading a lot of books like that.
Hmm.
I didn't go for counselling. I was reading a lot of books because even at that stage, I probably wouldn't have connected the dots that I needed to see a counsellor.
Yeah.
Just the way I was thinking about it. And I did some training in like NLP and stuff like that. And it was more like personal discovery. And that actually really helped a lot because it helped me uncover language patterns that I was
Hmm.
using and ways I was seeing the world. And it was really, really helpful. So that was really, really nice. And from there, I started to see patterns within people I was working with and myself still after that. And that was I suppose the first piece. And then like it slowly started to dawn on me, and I got some help from some really, really good practitioners, who were listening, they were friends who were listening to me talk about the symptoms I was having. And one of them one day just said to me, "Is that a fact?"
Yeah.
And it was like getting slapped in the face with a wet fish. So, what do you mean? That's what I've been living. And I said, but is that actually a fact, or is that like the story you've built up around that? And I
Mm.
was just like, what? What even is that concept? And then it got me thinking, obviously, and I was like, oh my God, I have a narrative built up here.
Hmm.
Huge big narrative about my symptoms. And it was deconstructing that. I think that was one of the biggest pieces for me. So I was completely unconscious to it. It was just under the hood doing its thing. So now when I'm working with clients, I'll describe all of that stuff, the belief systems, the narrative, the labels, the diagnosis, excuse me, as like the unconscious storm
Mm.
that sits under the hood, that's interpreting for you, or influencing your interpretation of what's happening in your body,
Yeah.
and having therefore a pretty important impact on symptom generation a lot of the time. So that's where I was kind of like then applying that to my clients and going, can you see how this like way of describing things is really, really fear based, fragility based? Like your body, it sounds like your body's about to crumble, and they're like, yeah. And I was like, well, is that true?
Mm.
And kind of using the same sort of strategy, and that was really profound for a lot of people. Like they got a lot of value of going, actually, maybe that's an opinion based on somebody's opinion of me,
Yeah.
and what's actually the truth. So then it was like for me diving headfirst into research and starting to understand how robust are we, and what's actually happening in somebody's body. So I could then come to an appointment with someone and not confidently state this, but have a be able to explain to them what I understand, and point them in the direction of some references if they need it, or geeky like that. Um, so they could maybe start to flip that script on its head a bit. Do you know? Does it? Hopefully that makes sense. But
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. I like you. I see that as a very important part of listening to what's going on with clients. Is just the way they frame the stories.
yeah,
And like you, also, I mean, for me now, it's over 25 years ago, but I did my NLP practitioner's diploma, and when I was first using it, I was actually working in an outdoor activity centre down in Weymouth, and I was using it to get people through high ropes courses,
uh,
because every time they told me that they could, and blah blah blah, I was helping them to reframe that language of, well, what would it be like if you did?
yeah,
And just listening to those stories and the language that people use, for me, is a really critical part of
yeah,
people's health journey, because so many people are focusing on the negative side of what's taking place without thinking about the constructive. And I
yeah,
like to remind a lot of my kind of more negative clients that actually their survival rate for their worst days ever in their life is still 100%. So it's kind of like
absolutely.
when they start to think about that, and you can see that kind of go off in their heads as that happens, and it's just like, wow, so I'm actually more resilient than I give myself credit for.
Yeah, huge. And I suppose what that brings up for me is two things. One is that I kind of, even after the NLP course, I struggled to see how I would implement it because it was kind of a whole different field almost. But I understood enough to take it from me and then start to see patterns.
Yeah,
But the other side of it is that brings up is, I think one of the big values I hold for the work I do with people is attempting to help empower them to have the tools to manage
yeah,
themselves, their own situation, their own pain symptoms over time. Not everybody is maybe 100% ready for that at the time, but
yeah,
it's to move people in that direction. Because if let's say if I'm responsible for your pain getting better, then yeah, if I'm good at what I do and I'm effective and it makes sense and all the rest, I could be quite effective for you, brilliant. But I'm still responsible. Whereas if I'm more like I suppose not to fix anything or not to sort anything out, a problem sorter. If I'm a guide to help you manage it yourself, overcome it yourself, it gives you the power, and you always then have the tools. And I think that's a huge part for me because I don't think you can fully get there on your own
yeah,
unless you take that kind of, is ownership the right word? I'm not even sure. Unless you take
yeah,
that kind of empowerment aspect and bring it in here rather than leaving it with your therapist or
yeah.
with what Dr. Google says or something else, you know?
Sure. Well, it makes a big difference if you think that the 1 hour or however much time you get with your practitioner is going to be the thing that solves your problem, and you're ignoring the 90 hours a week that you're with yourself,
Yeah,
and what that might do. And
yeah,
in our life force qigong work, my teacher, my brother, and I, we look at these as these loops that we're just running on autopilot, and often we're looking at the practitioner a little bit like the Wizard of Oz. We're thinking there's some big magician that's just going to come and change everything for us, without realizing that it's the steps that we're taking on the road that actually make the fundamental differences over time.
absolutely. We maybe as a therapist, I'm holding the traffic lights, but you're driving the bus, like, you know, or you're driving the car. Like I can't drive for you. I
Yeah, yeah,
I realized that through my own journey. It was up to me. It was another big realization I had down the line was if I keep expecting results from people, which obviously you're entitled to when you're paying for a service and all that. if I keep expecting somebody to fix me, somebody to cure my symptoms, to sort me out, it just places all the responsibility on them, and I don't think that's very
Sure.
productive, fair. I don't know what words I would use here, but it was a big realization for me that I have to be active in it, you know?
Yeah.
And then it was obviously all the bits of the narrative and all the rest that I could be active with myself, you know? That was huge for me.
Yeah, and this is why in integral theory, the theoretical basis I use behind the work that I do, that we separate up that subjective mind and culture based idea with the objective behavior, movement, the physical structure itself, which includes the nutrition, the environments that we're in. You know, if I'm 40 hours a week sat in a chair, I'm going to be great sitting in a chair, but anything else is going to be
Mm-hmm.
harder.
Yep.
So, you know, I mean, even me now, I've spent a year on a standing desk, and for the
Mm-hmm.
first 2 months, I thought I might sit down, but I haven't done that yet. And
Awesome.
it's interesting the difference it makes to the types of behaviour.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great that kind of explicitly and overtly within your work that is in there.
Mm-hmm.
But what for you made the kind of the biggest shift physically? So obviously the sports rehab work didn't really take you through that, and then you moved into working with Gary Ward and his anatomy and
Yeah.
motion work. So was that a key part in your
Yeah.
own kind of
Absolutely.
transformation?
I still use that work every day. There's a couple of techniques that and the P-DTR work I use for create change. Like the anatomy and motion work, if I put it this way to you, it never really made sense to me how someone could assess me lying down on a treatment table with their
Mm-hmm.
hands and then extrapolate that out into the rest of my life, if that made sense. So
Mm-hmm.
taking the person off the treatment table onto the floor and actually starting to figure out or understand, have a framework to understand how their joint system interacted. And if I could understand that, which took time to build in my head, but I could then layer muscles on top of that and start to understand what might be happening. It's not a guarantee, but what might be happening. So if I have that old ankle that doesn't dorsiflex, what might that influence up through the chain? So there's 360 joints in the body. You could probably layer 630 odd muscles over the top of that. And according to Gary's work, there'd be like between, depending on how deep you look at it, 5 to 7 phases of movement that happen in a single footstep. So every joint is 3 planes of motion. So when you do the maths, it's like a mental amount, like thousands, maybe 8,000 joint motions in a single footstep. And that might not be like walking, might not be the context we need to explore, but it
Mm-hmm.
may give us an understanding as to what your joints can do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that whenever we look at, let's say, a deadlift or climbing a set of stairs or sitting in a car,
Yeah.
we might be able to understand or infer a little bit about what your body's doing. Why might things be irritated? Like, it gave me a lot of insight into load sharing through the
Yeah.
body. So if you cannot hike that pelvis, cannot side bend your spine to the right, you're probably living a little bit more in a left hike and a left side bend, and what ends up getting compressed and loaded and tightened and all that in those spaces. And it also gave me a change process for people because I could then say, okay, you can't side bend your spine. If we can figure out how to get you to do that and design exercises to do that, I'm giving your central nervous system something different and it's been used to for how long.
Mm-hmm.
And that process in itself, I think, is important. One of the things I think about a lot in clinic with clients is how can I create safety?
Mm-hmm.
How can I give the brain and central nervous system an experience of safety during movement, ideally, with some load, ideally, because there's nothing better to change its prediction, if you want to call it that, than something that's predicted as unsafe. Guide it gently without force to injure you, that it has a safe experience, and I think that's like so powerful. So a lot of the work I do is using assessments that are to do with movement, some change work, and then reassessing and exploration and movement, and then I give people homework and stuff like that, obviously. So Gary's work was instrumental in that, and I still use it every single day. And it, I wouldn't say I have the entire map. I'd say I have almost all of that map in my head. So that's 2013, I think I was doing that. So I did that, and I was lucky enough to do kind of extended courses with Gary and go over to New York and help him deliver courses and stuff like that. So it was phenomenal. And it is still phenomenal work.
which makes a lot of sense as well, because we often ask our clients when they come and see us, so, tell us about the problem. And they'll tell you about things that they find difficult doing. I can't do this activity, but I can do this activity. So it's actually giving you that insight into the
Absolutely.
client and, again, as a good practitioner, you're asking the questions that are drawing out those types of information from people as well.
I ask loads of questions. My clients would be like, "Is he still asking questions?" Like, when I meet someone, probably ask more questions than do things the first
Yeah,
appointment.
yeah,
Way more questions because I suppose to be effective for someone, I want to understand the context as widely and deeply as I can. And a lot of that will be like me asking, "If can you do this, and does this hurt too, and does this," and just trying to get as much information that's relevant. Like I think something to slightly jump topic for a second. Something I think a lot of sufferers of chronic pain struggle with is knowing what's relevant,
yeah,
knowing what to say to their practitioner. Like I'll have had like probably every day. I don't know if this is relevant, David, but let me tell you about this. And like, start writing again. Do you know, or start
yeah,
typing down again. So it's important to I suppose from the chronic pain sufferer or from a person who's looking for help to not feel unsure, embarrassed, awkward about sharing something that you don't fully understand or don't know if it's connected, because that could be the thing. I can't tell you how many times people have said stuff and I went, that's really
yeah,
important. I can it makes a theory in my head just go bing, there we are. There's something that I think would make a massive difference. So
yeah.
that's another side little tangent that I think is important to share.
Yeah, and it's something that, again, it's perhaps become more automatic for you, but for me to always check in is, just literally the question, is there anything else going on that you might not think has got anything to do with why you're here, but
Yeah,
might be useful for me to
yeah.
know? And it's
Are there any
amazing how
strange
often,
symptoms? Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So it's always good stuff. So
absolutely.
how did you incorporate the P-DTR into this? So
Yeah.
please just give a brief explanation of what that is
So
and its
PDTR,
expression.
yeah, PDTR is a process is a treatment technique developed by Dr. Jose Palomar. He's a Mexican orthopedic surgeon. And how would I put this to you? PDTR looks at the sensory system, right? So the input from tissues to central nervous system, and looks for any areas of, let's say, sensitization you might have, like peripheral sensitization, that might be influencing your motor output, your movement output, your ability to share load through tissues and stuff like that. So there's muscle testing involved with that.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of what would you say? There's a lot of skepticism. Is that the right word? Skepticism around muscle testing. There's a lot of skepticism around PDTR, and I get that. I ended up teaching for Jose for a few years, and I suppose what I'll say about it is I find it to be an extremely, extremely useful tool to help someone have a different movement experience. So I'll give them an assessment, let's say, do some assessment with PDTR, a movement assessment, sorry, some PDTR assessment and a little bit of treatment. And then we'll get up and we'll see if that starts to help them feel better. And one thing I think PDTR has helped me a lot with is to create a better narrative for my work so that people understand what I'm doing, why I'm looking at it, why it might be important for them. And it's all framed in a way that I think I'm being responsible with it if I can, that isn't creating dependency. As best to my ability to your, I'm not creating dependency for you on me. I'm doing a little bit of work and your system's taking over from here. So it's about reflexive change that way. So if we can get that to work well, I often see that leading back to Gary Ward's work, and we see movements that are free and available, whereas they were completely blocked before that. And I think it really, really simply, both of those together are designed for one thing for me. Two things, maybe. One, create safety for the person's nervous system about their body, and two, create more options. Like you probably heard me share an analogy I use a lot with clients will be if you have 10 roads that you can take from here to your local Tesco, let's say, and nine of them are closed today, you've only got one option. And if that's like in your body, you're struggling with movement options, and then when you apply more exercise, more intensity, more duration, more frequency, you're going to start overloading that tissue potentially, or irritating that tissue. So if we can help the person have more options and spread the work and learn the safety within those other options, then it usually gives people a better movement symptom experience, if you want to call it that. So I use them for that purpose. But again, I would say to you, like, despite how some people will talk about them, I see them as tools. They're tools within a process,
Yeah.
and it's not. I'm not here to say to you that they're the be all and end all. Like, some of them are fab, they're brilliant, and you have to obviously train and be proficient and all that. But they're tools in a process to help people.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the overriding things. We want to help people, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like all tools, they're as good as the person handling them.
That's it.
So, I mean, one of the things that we spoke about briefly before we started the recording is the variance in the quality of kinesiology that's
Yeah.
available, and how not all of it is the same, not all training is the same, not all of the backgrounds that people are coming from are the same. So, you can get quite a variation in the outcomes from muscle testing just depending on the framework that it's been taught to you in.
It's the same as any treatment. I mean, you could go to a physiotherapist who is absolutely amazing,
Mhm.
has a brilliant training history, has done lots of self development and, or sorry, clinical development, and you could go to a physiotherapist who literally, I'm not picking on physios here. Any therapist would be like this. You go to any therapist who has thinks I just need to massage that, stick some needles in and give them a stretch and away they go, and they never really get past that kind of approach. So like the variance is there. I mean, it takes everybody too. It's not to pick on anybody. Some people expect that, and that's what they seek, and that's absolutely fine. But it is a different experience, practitioner to practitioner, because like, I know I've had clients that have gone to practitioners of treatment techniques that I've used,
Mhm.
and they've had a very different experience with me than them, and vice versa. So look, it's everybody's figuring out to the best of their ability what they're able to do and how they can help people. And nobody's the finished article. Like, there's X amount of ways I want to improve myself over time. Like,
Yeah.
I've already identified 3 or 4 things I'm going to be working on over the next couple of years to help myself in clinic, because there's always going to be gaps in knowledge, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think
Obviously,
that's one of the
application.
things. It's one of the things we only get as time goes on. I
Mm-hmm.
think when we're younger, I started my journey into kinesiology at kind of like 27, and when we're younger, we get this sense that, oh, we've got this thing and it's now going to solve all the things. And it's only once we get a breadth of experience that we go, well, it doesn't work here. There's
Mm-hmm.
gaps in this. It doesn't help with these people or these situations. And if we're good at our jobs, then our curiosity is then what leads us into, well, how do we develop? How do we change that? How do we move forward?
Absolutely. Like, I've seen in my head at one point, I was thinking, oh, I've got this movement stuff, I've got this reflex work, amazing. It's going to help lots of people, and it has.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I would have people that, or if I put it to you this way, I would have tools that I think can help people. But if I'm not listening to that person properly, if I'm not meeting that person where they're at, and let's say they have a big problem with fear that they haven't vocalized to me, fear about their body, their structure, whatever it might be, if I don't recognize that that might be important, like, the best tools in the world would fail. I say this to clients all the time. If I give you the best rehab and best treatment in the world, and you still have a bigger top down influence, aka like a fear, worry, concern, belief, whatever you want to call it, that's having a massive impact on your prediction system and your body's decision making about whether to create pain or not, my treatment fails.
Yeah.
Do you know? And that's on me to capture that. And that's what I recognized when I was going through was developing as a practitioner, was that I would meet people where I could see the perfect movement, or what my assessment said they need this movement, that I could figure out with some of the work I was doing that I maybe need to work on this part of their body to help that thing happen. And even though I could do that, they may still have had a problem that, let's say with fear, just to pick on it for a second, that bending their back is dangerous for the back of a 90-year-old or something like that, right? That if I didn't address that bit, all the pushing and working I was trying to get that to happen, any amount of that wasn't going to make change for them over the longer term, because we hadn't help them develop safety. And that's where this big idea for me came in. Then it was like, okay, if that's all true, I need to help nervous systems and people and brains, or whatever you want to call it. I need to help them develop safety, evidence of safety. So there's an analogy I use with people, especially with chronic pain, where they come into me and will say, look, if every pain experience you've had in the past, if every treatment you've had that you maybe failed that process, or that process has failed you, you've had labels, diagnosis, scans, all that stuff, if that they're all Lego blocks, if you imagine them all as a Lego block, when you come to meet me, and maybe you've got a mansion built that represents all of the problems and the threat and the lack of safety, and the mansion, or not the mansion, the building that we want to build that represents ability, safety, your ability to control things and to be active in the process, that might be not even foundation level yet.
Mm-hmm.
It might need to be foundations poured. We need to help you build all of that and stop adding to the mansion, if that makes sense. So that analogy, that's a simple enough one, and I think that they're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it's nice because it opens up that safety making comes in many, many different forms. It could be mindset work, it could be movement work, it could be getting your sleep sorted out, it could be like the self-regulation piece, it could be treatment, etc. So that's kind of I suppose I see it now. Like, is that whole person's important?
Yeah, I teach a similar thing within my clients. We talk about the difference between priority and capacity. Your
Mm-hmm.
number one priority to solve, you might not be in capacity for. So we need to work from the level of capacity, what you
Yeah,
are able to do, what you can do.
sure.
And in the Qigong work, we talk about this of window of tolerance,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't want to take you outside of your window of tolerance. So that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if within the class you're not matching what I'm doing as a teacher, but you're doing a version of that
Yeah,
movement that's
absolutely.
inside something that you can manage, because
Mm-hmm.
as then that becomes easy and comfortable and there's a flow in it, then you can start to extend it beyond that point. And that's when you start to move more towards what my movement is as the teacher, rather than just saying, if you haven't got it precisely as I am as a teacher, then it's wrong,
Yeah, yeah. That
which
doesn't
doesn't
empower
help
anybody. That
anybody.
doesn't make any sense. No, you're dead right. I mean, like when I'm speaking about like stuff I might suggest to people to do at home, it's always like I might give them if it's exercise sets and repetitions and all that, and I'll always say to them, "This is a guideline. Fit it into your life, because ultimately the consistency over time is far more important than whether you get one set of this right or one evening of this right. Like what can we do? What can we help you to do for maybe 10-20% of your effort to get 80% of your results? And can you not beat yourself up for the 20% of the time or 80% of the time maybe that you're not going to get it done?
Yeah.
Like that stuff, if we can help the person just be active and take the steps themselves, even if it's tiny steps, even if it's going for a 1 minute walk 5 times a day
Yeah.
versus trying to do a 10-minute walk and or whatever and hurting yourself, it's making sure that they have agency in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's absolutely massive for me.
Yeah, and in integral theory and integral life practice, we talk about scalability of all the
Mhm.
activities that we're trying to do. And I often joke about it being what I call a kettle boiling activity. While you're boiling the kettle,
Yeah,
what's the little thing that you can do that's going to add into your
yeah, for sure.
movement, into your health at that point? So, what do you see as being one of the hardest things that your clients struggle to really get their heads around in terms of their own
Easy,
rehabilitation?
easy, easy answer. Habits
Yeah.
change. Bloody hard. Like sometimes clients will struggle with the mindset side of what I will talk about a bit, because they're resistant to that. They don't want to go there. It's not been approached like that with them ever before.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, it's the people aren't who have the big intention and want to change, and everybody will have that, but it's actually practical implementation of that. I mean, what you're speaking about there with the kettlebell, and like I encourage my clients to figure out where they can slot this into their day with stuff they already do. They know they're going to be doing, such as boiling the kettle, brushing their teeth, all the rest. Um, but it's that piece, and I think for so many people with pain, they're so hard on themselves.
Hmm.
It can lead to a lot of negative self talk naturally,
Yeah.
and that self criticism side of it, like if we can liberate them from that a bit, that makes a big difference. So that's why I do that 80-20, 80-80-20 piece, because it gives them permission to fuck up, to be brutally frank with it, because that is going to happen. There is never a perfect week, day, hour that you get everything you want done. People have busy lives. They're attempting to help themselves with a symptom when they have kids at home, when they're working a stressful job, when they're commuting, when they're, you know, maybe managing other health conditions. Like, it's not an easy process for some people, for a lot of people. So keeping it as simple as we can, helping them figure out where they could plug it in and giving
Yeah.
them time. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see people more regularly usually than once every 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, because first of all, we need time to see if things are doing what we hope they do.
Mhm.
They need time to adapt to what we're asking them to do,
Yeah.
to figure out where it fits in their life. And I always encourage them to reach out if they're struggling, because a touch point, even if it's just a voice note from me, might be helpful for them to get back into the swing of it, or to make sense of something, troubleshoot. And I mean, it's that, it's that change is so hard.
Yeah.
And what you spoke about earlier, I have my own version of it. Everything you did yesterday, every day, you have the 100% success rate. I'll say this is why change is hard, because every single thing you did yesterday, even if it was with the worst symptoms, the worst experience on the planet, you still woke up today and it was, so therefore probably for your unconscious side of things, it's a success.
Yeah.
So why would you risk it by
Yeah.
changing something? Why would you do that? There's the possibility of failure there and the possibility of success. Do you know?
Yeah.
So
Beautifully
like,
put.
then when they say it, they hear that, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense as to why it probably is so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and this idea that people don't have the time to do a thing as well. I love to challenge that with people. And when you ask them about, well, I don't really spend much time exercising, I'm like, well, how long does it take? And they always have this either 30 or 1 minute or 1 hour idea. And I'm like, okay, so what's a movement and exercise that you like to do? And they might talk about yoga or
Mm-hmm.
something or other. And I say, right, let's do it for 1 minute right now. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
get up right there in the session, do it for 1 minute, and I went, great, you successfully exercised today. Now repeat that. And
Yeah.
it really quickly adds up to the fact that actually I don't have to do a lot. You're not taking time to regulate your breath. Great. Why is that? Well, I drive around a lot. I'm busy. Great. So when you stop the car before you step into your appointment, 3 deep breaths. When you get back into your
Yeah,
car
of
before you
course.
drive up, 3 deep breaths.
I call that grease the groove training. Like, it's a
Sure.
training, like exactly the same. Like, how can we fit this into your day? There was a period of time after COVID, when we were all back into clinic, that I was really, really busy and I wasn't getting time to exercise like I had been during COVID. So I was like, okay, on my little whiteboard, I'm putting down the exercises I'm going to write today. And every time I get 5 reps, which takes me a minute, I have a gym in one of the clinics. I run out, do some pull ups, come back in, spray on some deodorant, and next one, and away we go. Do you know, it was building it
Yeah.
into my day that way. And
Yeah.
I think if we can reframe it from, we have to get this rehab plan done in one sitting, yeah,
Yeah.
there's going to be a component to that where maybe your tissues get conditioned enough at times where you need the full thing to challenge your system. But for most people, that's going to be, can I accumulate a set amount of reps over the day?
Yeah.
When I do that 4 or 5 days a week, I'm
Yeah.
creating meaningful change. If you extrapolate that out in a longer
Yeah.
time frame,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is absolutely gold. When they see that, they're like, that's manageable, or more manageable than I was thinking about it. And then again, the confidence, the hope is there.
Yeah.
Probably some element, the what's the adherence is the word to the plan is there. But again, I'll always frame it for them this way: life's going to throw stuff at you at some point. It's normal for it to go pear-shaped whenever that happens. Never miss the second week.
Yeah.
Get that week out of the way, navigate it, do what you can. Don't let it bleed into the next one and the next one and the next one, and then maybe you're coming into the clinic, or you're coming back to me going, I'm so sorry I didn't do it. It's fine if that's been the case. It's been a month long. There's no problem. Do your best. That's all we're
Yeah.
ever asking. So nobody
Yeah.
can ask any more of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. And that's it. That sense of apology that people give as well. It's like, you don't need to apologize to me. I'm only here to support wherever you're at, and it's fine. Well, what else can we do to make that easier,
There you
more
go.
accessible? Where did you feel you could and couldn't do that? And
Yep.
like you, those little 15-minute gaps I have between clients, one of those minutes is always something that's about moving my body or doing something that
Yep.
adds value into my health and well-being in the
For
day.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
So one of the things that I see you're very excitedly promoting online at the moment is your new Bigger Than Pain program,
Yeah.
which comes with the free ebook as well as a subscription-based service. Is that right
Yeah.
in there?
Yeah.
Tell us all about that. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so how do I frame this? So if I go back to like 2000 and I want to say 13, 14, I was seeing people start to build online products, if you want to call it that, online services. And I thought to myself, oh, that'd be interesting someday. And the idea is always in there. I never really did anything. I was busy. I was doing teaching. I was treating. I was traveling. Family stuff. My own life, personal life. And then COVID hit, and I was sitting at home enjoying it actually, to enjoying the break from all the busyness for a while and the traveling and all that. And then I was like, I could really use this time now, so I'm going to sit down and map out an idea I had in my head for a course, an online course for people with pain. And I did that. I built that. It took me about probably took me about 6 weeks to build that in my kitchen in the place I was living that day. And like when I look back at it now, like I released it in I think it was May or June 2020, and it did pretty well. And there was some people that got absolutely amazing results with it. There was loads of feedback that I took on board about the modules being too long and it'd been difficult to navigate. And I had like silly things I shouldn't have done, but yeah, I was learning on the fly. And I took that down again in November 2020 and said to myself, right, I'm going to build something. I've got really good feedback here. I'm going to build something pretty comprehensive because people needed a few things to be different for it to be more effective, different rehab plans and stuff like that. So I said to myself, right, I'm going to sit down and build that. November 2020, my little girl was born, and we moved house the next year. And between all of that, I had started building out content and I was pretty happy with what I was building. Then our son came along the year after that. So between like from 2020 to 2020, middle of 2022, I was trying to build modules and it was taking time. And I was really frustrated. I'm not going to lie, I was really frustrated because I thought I have an opportunity here to help people and I've got some really cool concepts, some really good ideas. And it ended up taking me 4.5 years to build this thing. So my poor wife is probably, if she's going to listen to this, will be like, oh my God, he's been talking about this for 4.5, 5 years now. So, anyway, long story short, I built what I think is very unique. It's a really comprehensive uh, set of tools, educational core. Like it's a huge big thing. The kind of idea, if I wrap it up for you, I want to build an online world where a person with chronic pain can step in there and find the stuff they need to help themselves. Whether that's education about pain itself, because they don't know why they're in pain, they don't know how to make sense of it, whether that's a roadmap for what they need to do, rehabilitation plans, movement plans, how do you regulate your own system, the mindset side of the journey. So I've built a massive resource for all of that. And I've called it Bigger Than Pain. So I used to call it Move Out of Pain.
Mhm.
And what I realized through the process of building out what I was building out was that that wasn't the right container. It was really limiting because it sounds like a mobility course, maybe, and which nothing against that. It just wasn't what I was hoping to build. So Bigger Than Pain came out of somewhere, and I was like, oh my God, that's the thing. You can become bigger than the pain you've been experiencing. And it's something I firmly believe. Every person in pain is there's much more in the totality of that person than just their pain. Yet that's the thing that's dominating, right? So Bigger Than Pain is my attempt to build, well, attempt. I think I've built something good. I'm obviously going to get feedback when I launch it this week and over the next couple of months, but I think I've created something really, really, really comprehensive. So again, back to the idea of you having 600 hours, 600 and something odd hours outside of a therapy clinic for you to have to manage and navigate your symptoms. What if there was a resource there that you could use, that you could plug into with a community aspect to it, with me maybe helping support you and stuff that would help you get further along? Essentially, this is what I needed whenever I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 23, 24. I would have bitten your hand off for this because it would have given me a process to make sense of what I was going through, some
Yeah.
support and guidance and all that. So I've built that out. I've built an ebook as well, and the pain recovery roadmap. And I've actually just yesterday got an absolutely amazing, huge, big, long email from someone who used that and has found amazing value in it. So I know that it's helping, and I suppose I've got so much planned for this. This is the first, like, I want to get this launch done and I want to get people into the course and get some feedback, and I've got loads of interest in it. So I'm hoping it's going to do well, obviously. But I'm going to be there in the trenches with my people, doing my best to help them over the next couple of months, getting some feedback, refining some things. We've got a personalization system built into it. So there's an assessment that we do within it that you can then, it will recommend modules for you that'll help you after kind of the core content sort of things. So there's loads and loads there. It's it's taken me absolutely ages, but I think it's going to be really, really helpful for people.
Yeah,
I don't know
sure,
if
but
that,
good things
hopefully
come
that answers.
to those who wait anyway. And even just taking a look, as soon as your free ebook went up, obviously being the whore for interesting bits of pain and recovery information that I am, I downloaded it, and just in the contents of it, understanding pain patterns, building foundations,
Mm-hmm.
creating a recovery environment,
Mm-hmm.
transforming the pain story, a
Yeah,
recovery blueprint.
yeah,
And then it's just, there's so much just in the free bit,
yeah,
let alone in what's coming in the subscribed content for that.
yeah,
So it's really exciting stuff.
yeah. No, I think there's like, it's built, I suppose, based on what I needed back in the day, because I think I've had a fairly strange journey, but unique journey from the time I was with my symptoms through to me helping people. So I think it's given me a lens on this from both sides of the coin that
Mhm.
helped me see the different aspects. I'm not saying I'm unique that way. It's helped me see the different aspects on all of that. And I think the perspective I have, the experience I've had in clinic and stuff, I I feel like I'm well placed, if I may say that, to build something like this. So, look, I'm hopeful that this is going to make a massive impact for people, and over time we can refine it and build out some more content. And I've got loads and loads of plans for all of that. So it's the start of a process for me. It's going to start to change me because it's going to start to change how I work a little bit, because clients will have access to this if they choose. Um, so yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting, Ben. I'm really looking forward to getting this launch done, and to get on with what we need to change, and to build something that's, ultimately going to help people change their own lives. Do you know?
Yeah, sure. And I think it's one of the things that people benefit from is having a good roadmap, is
Yeah,
having an idea of how they're moving, but in a framework that allows that flexibility that if I'm not where my my roadmap says I need to be on day 27 or whatever, that's okay
hmm,
because that unique individual flexibility is built in there so that then whatever recovery journey that you're on is your pathway, and
absolutely,
nobody can walk that for you, and nobody
exactly.
can understand how you're experiencing that internally, which comes back to the story that we give ourselves about why we are where we are and what we can and can't do and what we're capable of.
There's absolutely that. There's a full module on that topic, because, again, from my personal experience, the story I had a problem with, the story that was perpetuating inside my cranium, was a huge part of. If I put it this way, that story is part of the thing I believe the thing your central nervous system references when it's decision making about what it's going to do now. So if that story is massively negative, if it's very, very anxiety producing, fear inducing, if it brings up a lot of that emotional stuff that way, then it's probably going to be a big contributor to your symptoms rather than a help or support system for you. So is there a way we can start to help you examine that and figure out what your own story is?
Yeah.
Because again, if no one's ever put the mirror up or turned the lens inward that way, then you may have a big stone that you haven't turned over yet in
Yeah.
your own recovery journey. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, and I think it's so important. One of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about is how there's quite a lot of research that shows the way that we represent the world is based in story.
Yeah.
So the value of stories, metaphors, archetypes, all of this stuff is so important. And I'm constantly asking my clients to try and use a constructive view of their world,
Mm-hmm.
because and try and frame things in ways that actually help them, and I'll ask them, is it helping you to think about that in that way?
Yeah.
And even down to the idea that, if I ask you to think about a flower, you're going to think of a flower. But if I ask you not to think of a butterfly, what are you going to think of? So
Absolutely.
even how we use our language is so
Absolutely.
critical into
Oh
what
yeah.
outcome we get into a day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, language isn't just language. In here. Language triggers your neurons to connect and to fire and to do all that. So, like, if we go into some of the geeky pain stuff for a second, if you've heard of a pain neurotype where there's lots of connected experiences, some maybe really closely linked and some maybe kind of disparately linked, your language can trigger and maintain those networks.
Hmm.
So if we change your language, that in itself can be a tool to change how you experience things. So like it's absolutely amazing to hear that, because it's a big piece that I feel is not really well understood. Like the words that you use may actually be contributing to some of the symptoms at times. It might be a bit of a leap for someone, but if you kind of dive into it, you'll see that there are lots and lots of connections that way. And I mean, it just goes back to the narrative, like that narrative that you have about yourself is triggering and influencing the interpretation up here. So
Yeah.
as we said, so it's huge. I mean, if we can write a more realistic, I always talk about realistic. Is that realistic? Is that as true to reality as we can find? Because
Yeah.
if it's not, you have a perceptual filter there, or a perceptual influence that is possibly skewing things for you, and that might be contributing to your symptoms, or it might not be. It's obviously it can go both ways. But if it's a really unhelpful piece, then
Mhm.
that's going to be something we'll seek to help you move on with and frame differently. And is that like, as an example, has someone told you that I used it earlier, your back's the back of an 80 or 90-year-old? That's a pretty important set of words that you may have latched onto at some point, that reinforces the need for protection, the need for potentially for symptoms to stop you doing the thing that your system perceives as being unsafe. So all of that stuff, it's huge. It
Yeah.
really is.
I don't know about you, but there's quite often when I'm listening to clients and they're telling me about what they've been told by other professionals that they may have seen, whether it be conventional or non-conventional. And there's a part of me inside that sometimes some of the words that they repeat that they've been told, I just like, I cringe. It's kind of like, wow, that was a really unkind or unfair thing to seed in your mind, because we take the words of those professionals so literally. They're
They're
so
in your
important to
backpack,
us.
aren't they?
Sure, yeah, but it just astounds me sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like I've how would I put it? I've seen it so many times, and I'm getting increasingly sick of it, unfortunately, and I'm doing my best to
Sure.
not like, "Argh." um, but like a lot of times when people are failing a treatment process, their words seem to hint that the therapist they've been with has kind of thrown out some of these unhelpful things in conversation, and it's almost like it could be like a blaming thing, or maybe they don't even mean to do that, but the
Sure.
person may interpret that as, well, they think I just can't do it, and it's this kind of double whammy of like, you've got the back of this, and this is why you're not going to succeed, and then there's this also part where they're like, yeah, and I don't think that person thinks I can't do it, so it knocks their confidence a little. So it's like I've been a firm believer that words and the language we use when we're talking to people has to be so careful,
Hmm.
because you don't know when that person brings on a throwaway phrase that you might say and internalizes that consciously, unconsciously, and that influences things in a negative sense from someone. Always attempting to ensure that my language is as clear and as clean as it can be.
Yeah.
Um, and if we can do that, I think we help people. Like I still remember clients coming in and talking about, like, let's say a 20-year history of back pain. And when you really ask lots of questions and dive in deep, they're still looking at that old, I'm not going to name the type of therapist, let's say that showed them the jelly donut that squeezes out of the spine when they bend. And that's the little movie that's running around in their head that's triggering a lot of problems. And I'm just like,
Sure.
okay, let's unpack this and let's go to work on hopefully helping you see why that's not the case. There's robustness in your system, but it's that stuff. Like it makes a huge difference. I see it so often.
Yeah, yeah, me too. There's a book I really love based on an approach called clean language,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's a great.
It's in my Amazon list to buy. I haven't bought it yet.
It's such a fabulous set of questions because it takes so much of the projection that we as an individual might put into somebody's
Mhm.
situation and just gets them to reveal their own stories and metaphors in their language, which
I'm gonna have to
I
buy it
think
now,
is
man.
really, yeah, it's really worth it. It's a great read. But it reminds me of a couple of phrases that I like to consider, and the first is that the body is wearing the shape the mind creates, and I think that's
Mhm.
quite an interesting way of thinking about stuff,
Yeah,
and that we become the thing we practice the most.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
whatever it is, if I'm going to tell myself I'm crap at something, I'm going to be crap at it, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
really good
Seek out
at
the
being
evidence
crap
that
at it.
confirms your worldview, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because we're just bending into that space for ourselves, and
Absolutely.
yeah, it makes an astounding difference. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I must get that book now. That has me interested.
yeah, sure, you'll love it. Yeah, I'm sure. Given the conversation we've had today, I'm sure you'll
Mhm.
enjoy that. So give me a bit of an idea as well about where you see your work and your approach evolving over the next decade or so, given where you are now. What's changed over the
Um,
last 10 years? What do you got in mind?
what have I got in mind? I definitely haven't got a 10-year plan. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
I think like I want to build some stuff online for sure, because I think there's a lot of people out there struggling with symptoms
Hmm.
that if we could connect them to people, resources, pathways to help them, that they could have a very different experience. So I want to be part of that.
Hmm.
And I think I'm on my little roadmap in my head for doing some of that stuff. Um, I think I think that's probably the biggest part of the vision I have so far is to build awareness around that there is stuff that we can do to connect the dots and help people. Um, and I mean, that's built into a platform based thing right now. Potentially, I don't know, maybe would an app do it? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure that way. I have a vision for what I want to create within it. And I
Hmm.
think what that will do is um, really support people at a level that hasn't been done before. That's what I'll say on that bit. Can I pull that off? I'm hopeful. I'm probably going to need outside help, which is fine, but I've got a vision for that stuff. Um, and I suppose it's then seeing, are there things that I've missed that I can build in? It's trying to aggregate stuff to help people and make it make sense for them. And yeah, I mean, I've previously done a lot of traveling with work with clients abroad and stuff like that, and it's helping them clients when I can't be there.
Yeah.
So it's providing support structures is probably how I'd phrase it. And then like to go on and do I'd love to maybe go into some formal education around this. If let's say I can take some of the stuff that I'm building and create some kind of data around it, I'd love to stress test it that way. That'll be really cool if I could get to that place. But even just formal education for myself, there's lots and lots of areas that I'd like to maybe kind of expand into, that would help me in my work. I mean, I'm blessed to be really busy in clinic and stuff like that. So I'm just keep my head down, keep working, and raise my little family and all that. So I'm in those years at the minute with the the young children and all that. So
Yeah.
keeping myself healthy as well, as part of it. So that's kind of what I have over the next few years, and I'm sure it will iterate and I'll build in more things to it, and probably more content and stuff too. So yeah, look at that. I probably want to get back into a little bit more long form content as well. So in terms of like blogging and stuff like that, I quite like writing. So yeah, just building out that online world is going to keep me busy, I think, for a while yet. Anyway.
Yeah, sure, fabulous. And what do you think that we should be exploring in bodywork that just isn't being given enough attention?
In body work that isn't given enough attention. Few things, and I know Bowen does this in a way. It's the skin. It's the neuroectoderm, the dermal tissues, and the little the nerves within the skin, because I think that's what we can actually touch.
Mhm.
I think people don't think about that stuff. I don't know if you've heard of dermal neuromodulation. You maybe have or haven't. There's a lovely
No.
technique by a lady called Diane Jacobs, who has, I think, let me get this right. We have something like, I'm probably going to butcher this stat now. Something like an entire football field back to back, over and back, it's worth of cutaneous nerves in our body. Like miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of cutaneous nerves in our body that nobody ever thinks about. So for me, that's something that's interesting. There's bound to be, if I think of the sensory work that I do, I see issues with that system for some people.
Mhm.
Movement issues as well. There's bound to be issues with the cutaneous stuff too, because
Yeah.
it's innervated. It's got feedback to the brain. So I'm interested in that. I think there's something going to be, hopefully, some value to learn there. And then outside of that, what does bodywork need? Actually, I think it's really something that's available right now, but people don't do enough. Is to actually listen and meet the clients where they're at.
Mm.
Like I'm by no means perfect at this at all. I fail more often than I succeed, probably. I'm a work in progress that way. I think it's so important if we can give a person space to bring forward their problem, their view of their problem, their view of their world that way, if you want to put it that way, and get that information. We don't dive straight into what we think we know, and we can actually be effective for what they present. I think that's missing a lot. And if we can get that, um, and maybe just a little bit more kind of an overall view of what can influence someone, like
Mm.
that kind of, we've spoken about the kind of psychological side of it, the movements. I mean, it's not necessarily that you have to go and train and all these things, but to have an awareness that they can be big influences. So maybe that means pain education or education about what can influence your pain system. I don't know. That's probably what I think is needed, because it's stuff that I keep meeting clients that come into the clinic and nobody's ever talked to them about that stuff. Like
Mm.
nobody, and they might think of me as last resort person, and they might not be expecting at all what I'm about to talk to them about. So I think it's like, is there some way we can start to help people frame that so that they can understand, the client can understand what might be important for their journey?
Yeah, fabulous.
Oh.
I love that idea within looking more at the skin as well. And
Mm.
it kind of provoked for me this idea that we know that when people are in kind of chronic fight flight, when they're in chronic sympathetic, that their light sensitivity, their sound sensitivity, their smell
Mhm.
sensitivity all increases. So
Mhm.
why wouldn't their perception of touch?
Absolutely.
And just the changes around that, and the ideas of you kind of increase in the biochemistry that makes those pain signals just even more acute because
Yeah.
of that space we're in
And
and
then
how we
think of
can
the
change
opposite
that.
about how the safety we can bring with touch. Like it's well
Sure,
known
yeah,
in the research that therapeutic touch is important.
yeah,
But I think there's more to that story. That if we
yeah,
can flesh it out and help to understand it better, like anything, it's probably a tool in the toolbox
yeah,
to be applied. Obviously, if you can understand it, to be applied at the right time for the right person. But I think there's more there.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you about having practitioners having that more open, wider view on what could be contributing. And in fact, we've just had the Bowen Global Summit happen, and the presentation I gave on that was all about the importance of understanding the difference between the mind, the body, the culture, the
Yes.
environment, and how they all interact with each
Yeah,
other.
nice.
And even if we don't, like you say, have the overt training in that,
Mhm.
having the awareness that those influences could be affecting, and
Absolutely.
listening more to the clients and what's going on for them, meeting them as they
Even
are.
that might be as simple as being able to listen, like you've just suggested, and having a network, building a network of people you can say, this person seems like they're really struggling with the kind of maybe mindset side of the pain journey. Let's refer them out to this really good CBT practitioner or psychologist or whatever.
Yeah,
And it's helping to connect the dots for the person, even if you're not doing it,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that
totally.
overall brings a better treatment experience, a better journey for the person.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's been my journey for the last 15 years, is
Amazing.
looking at how those aspects are so vital in getting good outcomes. So
Yeah,
yeah,
amazing.
I love it. David, thank you so much. We've been chatting for over an hour now. I love how easy it's been to talk to you.
So
I'm
thank you.
really fascinated by your work, and I wouldn't be surprised if you catch me subscribing to your work as it goes online, which by the
More than
time we
welcome
release
anyway.
this will be up on there. But if people want to find out more about you or your work, they want to connect with you, where shall we send them? The links we're going to stick in the description to the
Yep.
video. So where do we send them?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I am at Pain and Movement Specialist. On Facebook, it's David McGettigan, Pain and Movement Specialist. On where else am I on? On TikTok, it's bigger than pain underscore bigger than pain. At YouTube, it's the same at bigger underslash than underslash pain. Um, and I have a Substack blog as well, called Bigger Than Pain. My website, davidmcgettiganclinic.com. So they're all
Brilliant.
that'll probably get most of my stuff.
Yeah, we'll make sure that there are links for all of that in there. And as well, even on your YouTube, there's like 285 videos on there. There's like loads of content for people
Every
in there to
every
check
single
out.
thing, like Ben, every day that I'm in clinic, that I'm with someone and I have to troubleshoot something and figure out a way to help them with an exercise, I film a video,
Hmm.
stick it up on YouTube, and make it not personal to them, but make it like about the
Yeah,
topic, so that when I get a person in with a similar problem, I have a resource. So I've been doing that for years. So I've got like, there could be 200, there could be, I don't even know how many there is, 200, 300 videos
285.
of, and
I
there's
had
lots
a
of stuff
look.
that's unlisted there as well, that I'm using, that
Right, okay.
there's like so much content on that. I mean, it's not guided in any way, but there's tons of exercise tutorials and different videos and stuff up there for sure.
Brilliant. Love that. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate it. And thank you as well to everybody who's given us their time and attention and listened in to what's been for me a fascinating conversation. I hope you find it too. If you like this stuff, please do the shit and hit the like and subscribe buttons, share it, tell people about it. Let's help make the world a safer and less painful place for everybody to be.
Absolutely, Ben. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as well. Really, really good. And look, I hope people get loads from it.
Thanks, David. Take care.
See you later.